So I talk a lot about films on the channel, and I also like to try to talk a lot about trailers or animated shorts and whatnot. And I also like talking about TV shows. So recently, me and my wife, we were trying to find something to kind of fill a void we were missing when it came to wanting something along the lines of like Game of Thrones. We were really big Game of Thrones fans. I did an entry about Game of Thrones itself on its 1 year anniversary, or I think 2 year anniversary of its last episode. And we were just trying to find something. I'm looking up articles, reading like what other people have to say. If you have a Game of Thrones itch to scratch, watch these 10 TV shows or whatever. So there was a show that came out many years ago, something like around 2014, I think. It's called Black Sails. It was something we were interested in. We hadn't sat down with it or given it a chance. It has officially ended. It only had 4 seasons. It ended in 2017, 3 or 4 years after it premiered. And we were like, okay, let's give this a shot. Like, why not? Let's see if this show can, give us something to kind of invest in. And we invested in it so much, I think we finished it in 2 weeks, a little less than that. When it comes to there being 4 seasons, something like 40 episodes. Not bad. Probably could have been quicker, but of course we don't dedicate all of our time to just watching TV shows. We also watch films. We also have other things we have to do. I sit down, I record these. She has her own things that she does when it comes to her hobbies and her extracurricular stuff, like what I do. So we don't always have time. So yeah, we did an entire 4-season show in something like 2 weeks or something. And what I didn't know, and it didn't click in my head, and I don't get why it didn't, because the second you meet one of the very first characters, his name is John Silver, and it didn't click in my head that this show, I thought it was just a show, about pirates. I thought it was something like, maybe it's based on something, I just didn't know. But apparently it's Treasure Island, and that took me by surprise. I really didn't know, after being interested in this show for so many years, that I finally got to sit down and watch it. It never clicked in my head that it was about Treasure Island. And then, you watch the first couple episodes, and you go, oh yeah, this is all making sense now. And I love the fact that it's this, I guess you could say, it is a novel, but is it a kid's novel? Is it meant to be a kid's story? I know they've done other iterations of Treasure Island that it's meant to be targeted towards kids, because, kids like stories about pirates, and that's why, even though Pirates of the Caribbean does have a big turn towards the adult audience, it is still a Disney film made for, a younger audience as well. And being that this is a show that's based on this story that's mostly been portrayed in kid fashion, and it gives it this very adult spin, this very dark spin on the story, is just tremendous. And from start to finish, the show is just so entertaining. There are so many twists and turns, and so many plot twists, and so many things that everybody's betraying everybody, and everybody's sleeping with everybody, and you have the titles change hands, and you have people go all the way up to the top, and then people get knocked all the way back down. And there are, what I also like is I went into it not knowing any of the stars. I know none of the actors. I've never seen anybody in anything else besides Tom Hopper, who plays Billy Bones in the show, and I know him from, films like, most recently, he was in the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. He's also in a hit show on Netflix, The Umbrella Academy. Tom Hopper has done a lot, and he's the only one that I recognize when I sat down to watch the show. Now, being that he's the only known actor, I guess you can say, maybe other people recognize some other people who play in it, some other actors or actresses. I know that Ray Stevenson is in it for a small stint as Blackbeard, but other than that, nobody else I really recognize or have seen in anything besides that. And I could be wrong. Maybe they have, really good, or since then have built up really good performances to add to their repertoire. But I like that. I like going into stuff not knowing people. I think when you give no names a chance and they knock it out of the park, you get really good outcomes. Because when you put somebody that people know, there's a certain level of expectation with the acting quality or just the quality of the performance of the show or movie or anything. Like if you were to put Denzel Washington in a TV show, there's a certain level of expectation that you are trying to get when you go in to invest your time into watching this. So when you see him, you know you're going to get a fantastic performance. When you don't know anybody, your expectations aren't really there. They're not high, they're not low. You're going into it very open-minded, especially when it comes to the idea of watching this 4 years after its last episode premiered, when it came to an end. So you're going into it and you're watching all these no-names, all these people you don't recognize or maybe aren't big enough for you to have any sort of recognition of you seeing them in anything else. And you just watch them put on such great performances. Who's the guy that plays Flint? I think it's Toby something. Toby Steven or Toby Stevens. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't remember seeing him in anything else since then or before the fact. I don't know if he does much else besides this. I could be 100% wrong. I don't think anybody really just stops at one show. Not everybody is Kit Harington, who just did one movie and Game of Thrones, and he kind of took a break from acting. Very few people do that. So he's definitely got other things, but he is tremendous as Captain Flint. And of course, Tom Hopper does a great job. The guy who plays John Silver, I've never seen him in anything before. He kind of looks like a young Lou Diamond Phillips. If they ever wanted to do a La Bamba reboot, they could probably get that guy in it. And he does great as John Silver. And he's probably one of the best character progressions in the show. When you first see him, it's like, oh, he's this stowaway on a ship, and the ship gets raided by pirates, and he knows that he has to try to sneak his way onto the pirate ship in order to survive. It's basically, he's doing really schemy things, and he's a real slimy character, because he cares about himself and all he wants to do is survive. And that's his whole story arc in season 1. Then you go all the way to season 4, where they finally start building him up as being Long John Silver. And it's just great character progression to show how he goes from almost like you think it's never going to be about him, and then it's all about him. And they do that with every character in some way, shape, or form. And then, of course, it still gives you... We got into it because we wanted something that gave us that Game of Thrones feel. And this gave that to us. It gave us this idea because characters you don't want to die are dying left and right. And I'm not going to try to spoil it for anybody. I mean, I know the show's been out for, 8 years as of this point. Four of them being the season premieres, and then it's been out. So maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. But again, I don't want to spoil too much. But just know that I'm just going into it telling you this right off the bat. People die. Don't expect to get attached to too many people because everybody dies eventually. Just about everybody. Just about. I'm not going to say everybody, but just about every character that you have some sort of attachment gets some kind of death. And I will say one thing. There is one death that is very upsetting to me. And I guess it's because of how he dies. And it's the character of... Charles Vane. He dies. He's in the first 3 seasons. He dies close to the end of season 3. And his death is meant to be this symbolic moment where the pirates finally learn that, we turned our back on being pirates so that the English government can come in and kind of make life easier for us. And now here's Charles Vane, one of the captains who's like the epitome of all pirates when it comes to the story that's being built, and he gets caught and they hang him. And when the pirates go to try to save him, he sees them in the crowd, and he's looking at them dead in their eyes, and he's shaking his head, and that's basically telling him, no, do not save me. and he lets himself get killed. He lets himself hang in front of the crowd, and that's the pinnacle moment where the entire story flips back, and everybody's like, okay, we got to throw the English out. So you have this story that's based on Treasure Island, but it has a lot of Pirate of the Caribbean like essence to it, while also being historically accurate with what kind of actually was happening around the time frame, the century this is based on, but of course still also being relatively fictional. You know what I'm saying? Like, it still has that level of historic accuracy with being completely fiction, because none of these characters really exist. And when you're watching the story and you kind of have that balance where you have the historical accuracy, you have the very much Game of Thrones atmosphere that it sets up, and you have tremendous character development, it's a real recipe for a really, really great show. And this show, I believe it won a couple awards. I can't 100% remember when I was looking into it, but I believe it won a bunch of awards, or at least got nominated for some, things like being in the Emmys and in something else. But I feel like it was mostly the Emmys. I'm trying to think. I remember, maybe I can pull up the article right now, but a lot of it was during the Emmys, and they were nominated for a bunch, but only won a few, and it was very well deserved. Any sort of recognition the show gets is very well deserved, and even now, watching it 4 years after it ended, it still has its rewatch value, and it still deserves the chance for people who probably didn't give it the opportunity then to give it an opportunity now. And the thing with a show like this is it's very much also like Spartacus, where if you're a fan of Spartacus, that show needed to have an ending. There's a certain point where the story has to come to an ending. So 4 seasons was perfect because it told the story it needed to and got to the ending that you're meant to get to. The same thing with Spartacus. That's a story that's, again, fictional in essence, but based on something that's historically accurate to hold to. And if you're talking about it being historically accurate, there's an ending that it has to come to. And the ending that Spartacus came to was that Spartacus's army of slaves eventually lost because the Roman army won. The Roman army beat them. Same thing with Black Sails. Eventually, this has to get to a point where it levels out to be the story of Long John Silver and his pirates on Treasure Island. So there's a formula to get to that point, and the show takes that formula and utilizes it very, very well. And it's totally worth a sit through if you're looking for something that's gives you that Game of Thrones edge of your seat kind of thrills with a lot of twists and turns. And even if you're just a Treasure Island fan, when I discovered it was about Treasure Island, I brought it up to a friend of mine, and he was like, oh yeah, I watched that show like 4 times or something. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I love Treasure Island. And then he showed me a tattoo he has of the flag, the Treasure Island pirate ship flag from the actual book on his arm. So I'm like, wow, I never knew that about you. So real hardcore Treasure Island fans praise this show. And again, I went into it not even realizing that, and I came out very satisfied with it. So if you're looking for something to binge and you haven't found something and you've never seen this, my recommendation is give this a shot. It's only 4 seasons. It's about 40 episodes. They're somewhere between 40 minutes and 60 minutes, depending, like a normal show. It's also on Starz. So Starz is who produced this show. So it's not on any sort of level where it's restrictive to its content. It's very much a Game of Thrones universe, but set with pirates. And based on a novel, obviously. But yeah, totally worth it. If you've never seen it, I would suggest giving it a shot if you're looking for something to binge.